wanted to introduce the topic for today, From Management to Impact, IT Leaders Guide to Modernizing Operations. And I'm excited to welcome our two speakers today who will be able to join me on camera. Chris. So we have Chris Savio, Head of Marketing for the LogMeIn portfolio, and Umesh Mutia, the Global Offering Leader at Cognizant. So gentlemen, I will let you take it from here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julie. Welcome, everyone. As Julie said, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're all from. Excited for what I think is going to provide to be a great discussion just on some conversations we had in advance. As Julie said, joined by a very special guest, Umesh from our Global Offering Lead from Cognizant. Maybe, Umesh, give 30-second pitch on yourself, your role at Cognizant, what you do, and kind of background and context, so everyone knows where your expertise lies and why they should listen intently to what we're talking about today.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Hello, everybody. Pleasure connecting with all of you. Umesh Mutia, I'm with Cognizant for the last 15 plus years. I lead the global offering for digital workplace. We go to market with a brand called WorkNext. As part of my role, I look at interact with various customers, address their challenges in workplace operations, bring in solutions which can drive efficiency, drive outcomes for them, and especially impact the topic of the subject, right, of this session. So happy to share some of my insights and what we have learned collectively and what we have driven for customers, and see if we can share that experience with all of you in this audience. Once again, a pleasure to talk to all of you.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you, Umesh. And I think to the point you made, I think, Cognizant, yourself, your colleagues, obviously partners, some of the biggest and best known brands out there to solve some of their large workplace projects and even some of their small ones, right? And I think constantly pushing boundaries, works closely with LogMeIn, with some of our products, and actually pushing us to deliver more as well with it. So excited to hear what you have to say on some of our modernization topics today. So let's talk a little bit about the agenda from there. So discussion, what I'd like to do is actually just level set a little bit. This is not going to be a slide heavy discussion presentation. It's very much going to be discussion based, but I'd like to jump off with just a few stats or points just to level set on our perspectives from both the LogMeIn side around, what we see as trends and things, and how when we're developing our technology, the problems that we are trying to aim to solve. And then we'll pivot over to this virtual fireside. I should have one of those little fireplaces behind me or something like that, going for this like fireside chat, as we call it. That's going to take the shape of a few different directions, right? Want to start off with a little bit of the kind of current state, what Umesh has seen out there, some of the challenges facing a lot of the organizations that he works with. And then moving to what we kind of classify as this impact model, right? Moving that mindset, moving a shift from, hey, how do you actually deliver more out of your organization? And then a lion's share of the discussion, not surprisingly, is really going to be in this kind of agentic AI and AI world, right? This is a freight train that's coming very quickly. A lot of people have started to adopt it very well. Some are starting to look into it. Some are scared, of what it's going to do for them and their organization, right? So we really want to dive into, demystify a little bit of that, and help you kind of understand what's real, what's not, and what you should be using. And then give you kind of the lay of the land around how you should be looking moving forward, that path. What are some of the things you can start on today? And then I always like to kind of, whenever I have these discussions with individuals like Umesh, look into a little bit of the crystal ball and what we kind of see maybe to the future. And then we'll circle back with a few years with you, Umesh, and see how right you are. And then, of course, if there's any questions along the way, as Julie said, just drop them in. If they're relevant to what we're talking about right then, I'll probably, layer them in. If not, we'll hold a couple of them to the end. But please don't be shy. You got an expert here to bounce things off of. Before we get into it, I would not, I'd lose my marketing card if I didn't give a little LogMeIn context of who we are. So LogMeIn, for those that aren't familiar, been around for over 20 plus years, solving problems from starting with people starting to work remotely with our remote access solutions, all the way to today, to helping to solve for a lot of these AI needs and evolving security problems, right? With a brand that's been trusted, millions of organizations have used us. We've innovated along this journey as there's been these inflection points from mobile innovation to the first phase of what I like to say is AI, right? The natural language processing approaches to virtual support and so forth. We've kind of been there, and we're happy to be there today for this AI transformation as well. And our two kind of hero products, that we're out there helping to give organizations and deliver more of an impact are our Resolve solution and our Rescue solution. Resolve is kind of an unified endpoint management platform built for kind of mid-market to lower-end enterprise organizations to help kind of consolidate all in one, while Rescue is really our enterprise flagship for remote technical support, pushing a lot of boundaries that we work a lot with Cognizant to help your Fortune 100, 500 organizations troubleshoot and solve problems for technologically, both for physical devices as well as potentially disconnected devices with a lot of cool AI innovation in there, security at the forefront. So, okay, marketing hat off, back to the conversation part of it. So as I said, I want to tee off a little bit here around the state of tech support today, right? And how my perception of it is there's kind of two sides to every coin, right? There is from a support, there's the people that are involved, and as much as you want to push the idea of AI and agentic AI, there's still people, humans in the loop, and things that are going to need to exist. But today, a lot of the problems that are facing it is agent burnout. And this is actually where a lot of modernization pushing things forward are just going to actually maybe level set you and get you back to zero. With rising turnover due to agent burnouts, weekly stresses by agents, right? This is all compounded because of complexity of what's being supported, problems that are going on out there, additional burdens and pressures, with maybe labor reductions and so forth. And then the other end of it, on the agent side, that's compounding their burnout and frustration, is the growing customer expectations, right? Customers expect, whether it's an employee or a customer of your organization's, your product, they expect that resolution as soon as they get in there, 82% of the time, that first impact, right? Because they're doing a lot of this troubleshooting and problem solving before. They're much more sophisticated than they were, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And CSAT is pretty flat. The 73%, not bad, not great, but it's flattened out, right? So there is the opportunity for organizations to stand out and differentiate themselves with better processes, flows, and modernization. Pivoting to ahead, so there's the people side of it. But then also, what compounds this and can help or can hurt is the processes involved, right? And I think today, as I mentioned, the complexity of issues and workflows has not helped these agents in their burnout, has not helped customers have a better experiences. I'd venture to say it's gotten worse, right? It's been subtraction by addition in the state of more complex technical issues, right? Devices are getting more complicated, interconnected systems that are making processes more complicated, software that's getting much more diverse and spread out. So it's adding to that complexity, as well as tickets that are getting escalated unnecessarily because of junior individuals that maybe aren't as knowledgeable with this, right? So you have longer support processes. 40% of time agents searching for information, again, because they're not experts on it. Things are more complicated, right? And these all compound to what we saw on that last side. Frustrations from agents, middling kind of satisfaction with customers, right? So that's the kind of state of it. And then, this savior, I guess for some might see it, I see it as something that's an enabler that really is going to help transform organizations, is AI. And we're going to talk a lot about this this afternoon, right? And break down this idea of what it is, what it isn't, and how you should be using it, right? Because I think there has been a little bit of, kind of plastering AI on everything and people not knowing what's left from right, what's generative AI, what's agentic AI, what's actually just task automation, and much more that's coming, right? But your peers that are out there, depending where you are, they are adopting it today, right? They're moving forward. There's widespread adoption. 88% of organizations are planning AI, are using or planning AI in at least one of their business units, just at least one. Much more prevalent in organizations, especially as you grow inside, with 75% of organizations piloting or deploying AI agents specifically, right? So moving away just from asking to get support, but kind of this ability to solve for them. Are planning. There's only 15% right now, but stats that we've seen up there have more than half of organizations having this within the next 2 to 3 years, right? As far as what's being solved for, you have 40% of organizations actually already including AI agents at some level, maybe potentially for standard workflows that are less risky, and some are really looking to push boundaries on really doing a lot of the autonomous troubleshooting and problem solving out there. Diagnostics is another big area where AI has seen leaps and bounds and is being used by a number of organizations, as well as kind of 22% with that mature level. And then lastly, productivity, right? This is, at the end of the day, ROI is hard to measure truly for AI. I think that's still something that's common. I know when organizations come to us, and looking at our solutions. They're trying to understand, well, what am I paying for here? Where's my return going to come from? And it's not linear, right? There are things across the way for it, right? But where really the impact is in productivity gains, right? 92% of organizations are using AI to boost productivity of their teams, whether that's offloading things or just getting more support. And that's kind of the highest driver for ROI. And then looking further right down this agentic path that we'll chat about with Umesh, 80% of common service issues are going to be resolved autonomously by 2029. That other 20% is going to be very hairy and complicated. But if you want to be on the bleeding edge, you need to be kind of out there figuring out how to autonomously solve this. Okay, so that's generally, I think, enough for me right now. What I'd like to hear before we jump into this fireside chat is a little bit from everyone that's in attendance today. So we got a little poll for everyone to kick it off. I'd just like to understand, to level set here. We'll put AI in the rearview mirror for a second, but what your biggest IT operations challenges today? So we kind of have 4 basic answers in here. You'll see as we push up this poll right now. Nika, if you want to send that up there. So biggest challenges, is it tickets? Is it agent burnout? Shadow IT is over there. Lack of innovation time, right, to adopt, or maybe there's something else. And if there is that other, drop that into the comments after you select that, because I'd love to hear or drop it in as a question. I'd love to see what some of those things are. So I'll give you a second here to go through and start answering them. So coming in quickly here. Let's see what we have coming in. All right, maybe we'll give it 30 more seconds. No, not 30, maybe 5 more seconds. 30 is quite a bit. All right, I think we are pretty good, Nika. So let's push it back here and see what we see. So biggest operations challenge, we got lack of innovation time. Not at all surprising to me. Umesh, I'm sure that's probably common for what you see, right? Organizations love to be able to do more. They just don't have the time to do it, so they go to experts like your organization. And just tickets. This one is not surprising. There's still this flood of tickets, I think, or with complexity and issues coming up, there's just more and more. And I think these two compound together. You're firefighting all these tickets. You're not being as proactive, which we'll talk about a little bit. You're being very reactive on your heels. Pulls away from everything else. Does this surprise you at all, Umesh, or these results kind of align with what you hear with some organizations that come to you guys?
No, this kind of resonates pretty much. And if you look at it, right, what we see, one of the biggest thing is addressing volatility in the environment, right? There could be major incidents, there could be divestitures, mergers and acquisitions, location expansions, depending on the business customers are doing. And respectively, the load coming on to IT support, that's a big challenge. Then there's whole tools rationalization, modernization, and this new AI adoption, which drives additional challenges to the support teams. Then there's the outside challenge of cybersecurity and compliances, depending on the industry, whether you're a PHI, whether you're on any ITAR or et cetera, right? And then behind all this is the focus on cost efficiency in the current world, push for tech productivity, and always user experience is something which you cannot drop. So we see a lot of leaders looking for solutions that will help them move from, as you said, reactive firefighting to be a more predictive and preventive operating model. And if that requires giving back, using technology, which will allow people to innovate, change the processes, modernize the technology, that is what they are expecting. And that can be done through a partner. They can drive it themselves, but that's in general what we see as a challenge.
Got it. Great. So let's pivot to the meat of today's call. So I'm gonna actually pull off my screen for now, just so it's not a distraction with just that up there. We might have a few things to pull up as we go through it, but so let's start at the top of Mesh here, right? Like I like to call this almost a reality check, right? You've already mentioned a little bit, the organizations that you work with. What are you hearing about their current state of operations, right? Where is their tipping point? Where are their major issues and problems?
I think, yeah, as I said, the major problems is their one side, they have a challenge of upskilling their resources to embrace the technology changes. Second is for them to modernize rapidly, be it hardware refreshes or software updates. If they are in a cloud modernization path, or I have already have done that, gone digital completely, but need to accommodate new technologies. That's a challenge for them. And there is all this pain points about the whole tech stack complexity. How do you manage the tool sprawl? How do you upskill the resources, right? So what we're seeing is that they end up having some broken systems, broken processes, and then they're not able to get the best value out of their investments, and it's always in a fighting mode, right? On figuring out what to address if you don't have enough predictability or solutions that can solve most of these problems.
Yeah, and so you say kind of that firefighting mode. Can you give me any examples of customers that have come to you and like, this is how we're always on our heels? Is it, you mentioned reactive a little. What other pieces of it kind of put people always on this almost chasing the problem and never getting out ahead of it?
Yeah, so most of the times they don't know when major incidents happen, right? There are some changes happening. There's no integrations. A different one eye makes a change and the other eye is not aware of it, or one hand makes a modernization initiative, the left hand is not aware of it, is not prepared to support it. That's one kind of firefighting, right? The second firefighting is challenges either vulnerability attack, like the CrowdStrike kind of example, or alternatively they get into challenges when there is a big escalation, a business escalation. Business is not happy with some outcomes. Then they get into firefighting mode to see what actually happened, right? And if you drill down, it is because of three fundamental things. One, you probably try putting more people to address problems, right? You've been adding more and more people to address problems, and then you're trying to see you can attack this with additional tools and technology to address these challenges, and build a lot of automations with workflows, rigid workflows to drive automations. But the biggest challenge is all of this is not driven with the experience in the middle of it, right? It's all built with an IT mindset, right? That is the biggest challenge, which is causing this firefighting more. If you reflect back and think of a business value and reverse engineer the model, then things will fall in place where you can drive outcomes with better efficiencies and be more proactive, preventive. We'll talk more about it, Chris, right? But that is the real challenge today.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that. I agree. I think there is still these organizations that have that IT mindset that isn't necessarily wrong, but I think they need to redefine what an IT mindset needs to be. And almost, what I was talking to an IT leader, I think it was last year, but he had an interesting approach where he said, he almost thinks of it as they're at a SaaS company, as they're a product manager, right? Like, so what would they do in that standpoint? They would sit there, they would listen to their customers, listen to the needs of their businesses, right? And kind of get out of just being this cog in a larger wheel and start being that more strategic and look at the bigger problems to be solved and kind of challenge the status quo a little. And I think, to your point, I think most IT leaders realize they can't just hire their way out of this problem, and they can't just add more technology to get out of this, right? It's probably a bigger shift, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, you're right. It's not just throwing people and just putting tools, right? It's about first clearly defining what are you trying to solve, the goals, right? And if you like I said, if you're selling products to the market, the customer what is selling. Just think of the internal users, right? They are your customers. So how can you productize your IT solutions that they will consume easily, which they would like to use, not the other way around, right? A lot of these self-service or automation solutions fail because of lack of adoption or lack of awareness, and in general acceptability for the user personas, who want to consume them.
Yeah. So let's pivot a little bit now and talk about, okay, so that's the common problem, the complexity, this firefighting, always on your heels, processes and people, everything compounding, right? When we've talked about this and I think the perception we have here at LogMeIn, similar to yours, right? There needs to be this kind of fundamental mind shift, right? From what you are as a business, how you operate, right? As we're saying, to really embrace new technology and approaches, right? So in your mind, what does it mean to shift from kind of this firefighting reactive approach to having more of an impact at your organization, actually being a strategic leader in kind of IT operations, and how would you kind of define almost that impact?
Yeah, I would say four things, right? First, you got to have, you need to define outcome-driven operations. So whatever you operationalize, what is the outcome you're going to generate out of it, right? And this outcome has to be business aligned. It could be like business availability. Am I ensuring the business is available to do what it's supposed to do? Because IT is always an expense, right? It's generally known as a cost center. And then the business user productivity. Am I ensuring that the business user productivity is going up? So if their productivity goes up, business improves, so IT is enabling them. So those are the first two. Third is try to improve what we call as business users experience, right? I mean, which is what is commonly categorized as CSAT in the enterprise. But you could redefine it, be more innovative there, and capture it more dynamically. We'll talk about it later. But business user experience is very critical because in turn it impacts your end customer experience, right? In a store worker cannot operate, cannot manage the till efficiently. They cannot manage the queue of people, right, are coming in to buy. So it impacts the end customer experience as well. And the last one I would say is you got to ensure that your transformation programs, how can you position it, your IT organization, being looked as cost center by business to more as a value center by business. So that's a mind shift you need to make. And the real impact in IT is what we call as true experience, right? True experience is always driven by a predictable and preventive operating model, not by the firefighting model. So we need to get to the true experience as soon as possible and show IT as a value center if you want to come out of this, traditional firefighting, approach.
Yeah, yeah, and I love this view that you had shared when we were talking about it, that I just kind of pulled up here on the slide, right? And kind of looking at that, right, to that point of moving out of that traditional IT mindset to look at the experiences across from your users, and how it's proactive. Do you want to tell us a little bit about a little more around this kind of breakdown of these kind of five aspects of the true experience?
Yeah, I'll make it very quick, right? Traditionally, you survey people after somebody reaches out for support through our survey mechanism on voice, chat, or email, and then they tend to respond. 2%, 5% people respond. They're tired of responding. They write something, and that's what you use as your inference of how they feel. But the real perception is different, right? So unless you measure experience at different points of interactions, this is whether they're doing a walk-up support, whether they are active working on a software, you got to measure experience at multiple points. And then, as I said earlier, personas vary. The experience of different personas, right, from executives to the frontline workers to your factory or whoever it is, that multi-persona experience mapping and then measuring is critical. Then, as much as possible, can you measure that experience real time? Not after they faced an issue and reached out to IT for support, right? They are consuming IT. So how do you measure the experience real time? So these three are fundamentals. And then ensuring that you can drive a predictive experience measurement, and you can predict that where will my organization's experience go, and then can I address that by putting in proactive and preventive measures to drive that is very key. So the last two is what IT has to do, and these are the various points and where you got to measure the IT. So if you bring in all this together in ecosystem, you can drive what we call as true experience ambition.
Yeah, it's something you said there. So that's great. I like I said, I loved this when you first showed it, and I think there's lots to digest here. But something also that you were saying, is measuring the impact differently, right, than traditional IT, where it's very much okay, tickets closed, your typical SLAs or stuff like that. When you're moving to a world that's much more impactful, and maybe some things are being proactively solved, right? And so these traditional things aren't there. You need to measure things differently, right? How would you say you kind of, I think you alluded to it a little bit, but you want to dive differently, like when you're talking to organizations that are transforming, like how would they measure their impact differently?
Yes, certainly. So beyond your traditional service levels, the world has known some terms called XLAs or XIs, right? Experience indicators. And then there are business level agreements, and you look at business improvement indicators, right? You got to bring in this three-dimensional view of service levels, experience indicators, and business impacting indicators, right? You got to have those metrics configured and tracked to drive this true EX ambition beyond reactive, just CSAT. So CSAT is not the only way to measure success. You got to think much beyond it. And this is where, as we talk and discuss about the whole AI ops model, we can look at how this could be executed right, how we could measure this more impactfully for the enterprise. We can discuss more on it, Chris. But in a sense, that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like, there's obviously the surge of CSAT and NPS, and then I feel like customer effort score became very popular and I think obviously there's going to be these new measures that are going to take over, to your point, to kind of measure some of the stuff that's going behind the scenes, and the value to the whole business and the value to the user of not actually needing to do anything, right? Like you have to almost measure nothing, because there shouldn't be a problem that they're experiencing.
Exactly.
So obviously work with lots of organizations that have started this mind shift and change. I'm sure you push some of them forward. Do you have any examples of companies that have started to make this shift and what they started to do differently?
Yes, indeed. So there are multiple customers. So let me take an example of one customer who started this journey at least 2 years ago, right? At that time, this was more conceptual, being tested. Right now, it is the standard model which we do for multiple customers of multiple scales. What they invested is they definitely invested on the right technologies for measuring workplace experience and intelligence. And apart from that, they also built along with the team with the right skill sets to kind of observe the experience, look at what is breaking in the environment, automate a lot of things, and then look at what we call as experience reliability engineering, right? So this is a very unique skill, like how you have the SREs in a cloud space. You have in workplace, you have the EREs or XREs as we can call it, right? Their focus is to ensure end-to-end the whole life cycle of, let's say, a software being provisioned or a hardware being provisioned or how it's consumed is in line with the user personas, business needs. Okay, and if there is a change in the organization, like for example, there's a patch being rolled out, or a new software being introduced, or even it's modernized, how will it impact the user experience? Are they being communicated? Are they being trained? Are there measures to or mechanisms to allow them to consume it in the way they like to consume it, right? That's the reliability engineering, and they need to ensure that it doesn't break through the journey, right? So that is becoming very key, and of course, because of the AI availability today, you can simulate some of this, and that's changing the game actually, right? When you bring in that new model, and customers have now moved to this model, and they started seeing benefits because of this particular model of creating what we call as workplace intelligence model.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ask me down the years, even now I see in many customers, I can't name them here, but they have gone to what we call a zero IT support model, which means there is human support for some reactive actions, but predominantly everything is observed proactively, preventively, right? And action is taken so that there is no breakage, there's no break fix required, there is no later support required, and hence the traditional what we call as IT support desk and service desks are kind of going away.
That's great, and it's wild that you say, right, this was kind of 2 years ago where a lot of this was conceptual and kind of moving into practice more, more of an approach there. Is there any type of so a lot of this is forward thinking, a lot of this is transformational for organization if they think the other way. Are there common resistances to this or obstacles that you see in customers maybe just aren't buying in, or organizations that are maybe it's a mindset thing, maybe it's operational, maybe it's a combination?
It is a combination of multiple, right? There are organizations who have challenged with some commitments to certain tech stacks. So they can't change it overnight. They got to wait out, or they got to bring in technology which will take out the cost of their already contracted technologies. So they have legacy technology they want to move on. They're not able to move. That's one problem we see. The other problem is, of course, even if they have modern technology or they're investing, integrating to their larger enterprise ecosystem, they need some support. So they're not able to do it by themselves. Hence, they reach out to other SI partners who can integrate them, be it your enterprise, SAP or Salesforce, your Workday or any of those, right? Even your other facility management systems, right, is required. Then comes the whole challenge of security approvals. if there are certain compliances in some regions, or if it's because of some ITAR, or if it's because of HIPAA, or if it's PHI or PI. There are those domain specific compliances we need to adhere to when we integrate the systems and get the respective support, right? And of course, the biggest challenge is I mentioned about the experienced liability engineers, right? That's a new kind of capability in the market. Very hard to get such people, right? So so getting that right skill resources at scale on demand is what customers are facing to kind of move forward in this direction.
Got it. Okay, that's great. I mean, a question come in that's more less around, I think, specifically what you're saying, but maybe there's a little bit of I'm not sure if everyone has this question or not. Maybe some ambiguity and maybe understanding Cognizant does or how they work. It was questioned, right? Does Cognizant automate patching or server updates? Does it compete with something like Resolve that does RMM and MDM or so forth? So just some context, and feel free, Umesh, coming right. So Cognizant is a global system integrator. Sometimes it's classified as a very mega managed service provider, right? So you use technology and best of breed technologies out there to build the perfect solution for customers, then help them implement it and service it and so forth. So Resolve is some of the technology that they have in one of their offerings. Rescue is another tool, but then there's obviously other solutions that are needed based on the organizations that they work with. Does that about sum it up?
Yeah, so I think I'm just reading the question, right? Yeah, we do automate patching, and server updates. Now, it depends on what platform. Is it Intel? Or is it, in Linux? Or what kind of servers are those, right? Secondly, are they VDIs, right? In Citrix Farm or Horizon. Now, there are updates which can be automated for, if it's just not server, if it's endpoints, there are different automation mechanisms. We use multiple stacks, and do we use Resolve? Yes, we do Resolve as for some customers, as not just an MDM, but also to manage, our beyond MDM, right? We see the value of Resolve going beyond that. I agree that the tech stack in Resolve, which we go to market as Work Next One, right, Chris? We work with you, has a flavor of these various platforms from Godot. But at the same time, we have created some teams, specifically skilled teams who can take the value of that technology and drive these. So sometimes 90% of that capabilities resides within the Resolve product. There are some 10% which Cognizant has to bring in terms of scripts or enhancing that. And as part of our trusted advisor, we do advise as a product release, Godot brings those features in the future. So that's how we've been partnering with Godot. I don't know if I fully addressed that question, but yeah. I tried addressing all those parts of the question.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly spot on, right? You take what's best needed for the company. Sometimes it's go-to solutions, sometimes it's other solutions to meet their needs and help provide that service wrap around it to make sure it fits in. So exactly. So good question, just to make sure this level set of where Mesh is coming from, Cognizant, for those that aren't familiar. So let's pivot a little bit now, because we've been kind of dancing around this, and I think this is the most important topic in my perception, whether people are begrudgingly tired of it or not already, but agentic AI, right? There was defined automation, which there's still a world for that, right? That are simple task things. There's generative AI, where it is asking the questions, getting the answers that are needed, whether it's simple questions, whether it's asking questions of your data, and then you're moving to agentic, which is really moving more towards a non-constrained, non-restricted, autonomous type world, right? And it's everywhere. How would you describe agentic AI, right? Why should leaders potentially care, Umesh?
Yeah, see, if you ask me in simple terms, generative AI, I call it the artist, right? The artist is something which use generative AI to create new content, could be text, image, videos. It's basically to create insights. So it's more of generating, right? Using that the power of large language models. Agentic AI, I would call it the intern, right? Kind of because it can execute multiple steps. These steps could be, it requires a little bit of oversight, but it's minimal human in the middle, right? But it can run. The big difference between agentic AI and the traditional automation, I would say, is traditional automation always dependent on specific rules, right? And it can accommodate minimal changes, and it had a lot of rigidity. It was typically what we call as workflows, right? IT process automation, and it needed manual debugging. It cannot use contextual reasoning where needed, whereas an agentic AI can do all of those automation, but it can contextually reason why it's doing some action and then take human guidance to go to the next best action, right? And it has more goal oriented, I would say. It breaks down the bigger objectives into smaller tasks, and you can have these multi agents, right, which we spoke about. I think we have a visual on it. Can do those actions, right, and can take targeted actions, and you can have human in the middle to ensure that those agentic actions are yielding the respective outcomes. It's within the guidelines, and there's no hallucination. So I feel from just generating and being an artist, agentic AI is helping us to have an intern to do some of these actions, right, in a more modern way, and allows you to be more, allows you to change on the go, drives better productivity. There's always human in the middle to ensure guardrails. But that's the biggest change I see between these two, or difference between these two.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it, right? And I think there's people that live this and think about it all the time, and I know I take it for granted. Not sure if you do, Mesh, right? When you're talking about AI, like we live this regularly. There's other organizations and individuals, depending on the size and what else you're doing, the lack of time for innovation, that don't necessarily comprehend or grasp at the time to really understand how this really can differ from traditional automation, right? It seems just automation with a wrapper. I've heard things, unfortunately, at trade shows I've gone to, where there was an MSP leader from a decent sized regional MSP that said, that AI is just glorified search and stuff like that, and that's doing such a disservice, right? I guess if you're just using Chat GPT to ask a question, sure, but to your point, it moves beyond this world of rule-based, rigid, linear automation, which there's nothing wrong with, but when it doesn't work, or when you don't necessarily always know what the problem is going to be or what it's going to hit, or the systems, right? We're talking about the complexity of devices, ecosystems, and problems out there. If you have a traditional script or automation, if it doesn't find exactly what's there, it's not going to run, right? So you need to have everything defined for all your different systems. From an agentic standpoint, you can really identify what the problem is, help define the solution, whether you want the AI to define the solution yourself, and then it can figure out the right way to solve it regardless of the technology, and get past some of those potential guardrails, right, that are out there.
So an example I could give, right, Chris, so quickly is, we're seeing agentic AI now used more, and I'm not even going to autotelic AI. We'll park that for now. But with agentic AI, we're able to create this whole AIOps model where you're able to observe, right, and then have AI suggest what is going to fail, right, predict what is going to fail, give you the corrective action plan to avoid the failure, and then also show you the root cause why it is failing. So what kind of was going to cause that failure. And then if needed, it can become autotelic, or it can be automotive, right? Automotive AI, which means that you can configure it to take the action by itself, or let humans take the action, right? Because you want to keep it on the guardrails. So that's the advancements we've seen. What it does this is it allows to reduce those whole firefighting scenarios, less major incidents, less tickets in the environment, less noise in the environment. So your technicians whom you used to probably pick up calls or respond to users are now actually using AI to prevent something, and they can go make the change. They can be skilled to go make those changes in the back end to prevent that from happening. That's the biggest change which is happening with agentic AI in the practical world.
Yeah. And there's a variety, right? We have this slide up here, right, with the multi-agents, and this is scratching the surface properly of the variety that can be there. But you deal with today, where have you seen, from this variety? You don't have to go into what each of these are. If someone has a specific question around what one of them is, please let us know. What are you seeing people most interested in, or the use cases that's gaining most prevalence, the type of agents out of these potential 6 today that you're focusing on? Either most, one or two of them.
Yeah, see, the endpoint and web agents are kind of everywhere, right? Which is like you have an agent on your endpoint, which kind of becomes like your Copilot, Microsoft Copilot example, all right, which is there in every Teams and it's being pushed. Or if you have other IT service managed systems, or you have DEX platforms, there's a bar on it which is sitting on it and analyzing things and interacting with the users. Same if you go to any modern applications, when you open the browser, those have those conversational agents or those AI sitting on it to take actions for you, right? So there are web agents, endpoint agents, and across those conversational AI agents, right, which can do it. And the conversational AI agents can be on a chat platform, it can be on a voice platform, which comes in and addresses issues, answers queries, etc. But we're also seeing these agents now becoming part and parcel of what we call as infrastructure application agents, right? If you take a native enterprise level application, like let's say Workday or you want to Concur, you have those AI agents coming in there to look at its performance and taking actions automatically or interacting with the users. Same goes for cloud app agents. And what we're seeing newly and which is evolving is peripheral observability agents. So agents will sit on peripherals like your monitor, your smart monitor, or your smart TVs, your conference rooms, and other equipment. These agents are getting big embedded on it, so they can actually track performance and take actions. And that's an evolving area we see at a very high level. There are multiple agents. We have 100 plus agents, right, for various actions, but this is how it is evolving at a high level, Chris.
Got it. Okay. And we'll dive into it in a little bit in the next section, right? How do you choose as an organization? How do you kind of take a step back and assess what you need to do? So we'll pin that one for a second. But I think a common question, you alluded to this a little, maybe we dive in a little, right? The role of humans in this type of AI, right? And like, what is the impact to replacing humans completely? So how does it work together? What's a human in the loop type thing for this? And how are humans going to need to evolve support agents in these roles in an agentic AI world?
No, so as I said, it's going to be changing, right? So for example, you need prompt engineers for prompting the nuances and context so that AI is trained properly. That's going to be happening. Then you have the architects, right? You have the AI, each of these AI agents need architects and designers who are going to design them, test them. So you need those kind of people, human, to do that. Then you need auditors, right? For example, you put it in a pilot and you want to audit and see if it's working, which is a human in the loop. Not only in pilots, but also in production, you always need auditors to ensure it's not going beyond the boundaries it's supposed to go. Then there are escalations, like AI cannot handle it, or there are complex or gray areas which AI cannot, like emotional stuff or any complex policies, which needs, so humans are still required to kind of handle those such kind of scenarios. And then, of course, as I said earlier, policy guardians who have to ensure that there's compliance and there is ethics being followed, and then some social standards as well, right? How AI can respond, the language it uses or the tone it uses can be misinterpreted in various regions. What is good in Europe cannot be in the US, cannot be in Asia Pacific, right? Changes. So you need those humans to kind of keep AI relevant. And that's a new skills which is needed in the market, and that's a biggest challenge to hire such skills.
Yeah, so this is kind of, I think, alludes to what you were talking about in this. I was trying to find it when you sent over, right? The kind of different workforce and needs for it. And so I think this is, if I'm a leader, an IT leader that's listening today, or an innovation champion or stuff, right? This is where you have to start looking at your workforce and team and skill set to understand, okay, who should I be leveling up where in these key areas to get the most out of it as some of this firefighting goes away, and you need to move to it, right? And so encourage you to take this piece to heart and start to understand, okay, where can I get the most out of my staff? Where do I potentially have to look for new skill sets and knowledge to come into my organization to meet these evolving needs as kind of the AI progresses. So what about, I think another common question, and I'm sure you get this frequently, right? When you're probably at the outset in contract negotiations and planning out full deployments, right? ROI, right? There's a cost involved in this, right? You can't get away from it, whether it's in purchasing the technology, whether it's the resources going to standing it up, and so forth. Do you define a timeline for real ROI, or how do you even define ROI when you're having these conversations with organizations?
So I would say, yes, you ought to define ROI, but ROI varies from what kind of project you're doing, right? So there's no definitive timeline. Typically, ROI can be achieved in 3 quarters up to 2 years for such, because you go through that pilot, I mean, proof of concept to pilot, go through the security clearance, and then put in production. And then AI improves over time, right? Whether it's agentic AI or any other automated transformations, they become mature over a period of time. But I also want to bring in the point that beyond ROI, you need to look at return on experience. Is this driving experience? ROI is you put in dollar, you got savings either directly from productivity, right? Or tools rationalization, the cost comes down. But has it impacted the 72% plateau of the data you showed me right earlier? Is it going to take me from 72% to 90 plus, right? And is it going to do it every time consistently? That's return on experience. So it's not always just the hard dollars. There is also return on experience, because experience changes, then your end customers experience change, which means business becomes better. That's the big impact value you need to drive, right? So you got to think a little ahead and not look at just tactical, okay, I'm going to try to CSAT from 72. You got to think of the big picture and see how do you take those steps forward, right? Maybe if I have to preempt a question you may ask, right, as how do I ensure I have these in a step-by-step manner, is you need to create an AI academy, right? You got to train people, skill people, certify people. You got to invest in that as an organization and drive these projects which will automatically fund your transformation, right? Because one is you need seed funding from business to say I'm going to do this transformation. Second is you cannot keep asking for funds. So the outcomes have to ensure they self-fund your transformation journey. So that's why the timeline, as I said, Chris, might be 3 quarters to up to 2 years, right? For you to get to that kind of state.
Yeah, and it all comes back to, right, what are the problems you're trying to solve? And I think like anything, right, you need to chunk it off, identify things along the way, right, and not boil the ocean and try and solve everything at once. To prove out, right? It's not necessarily a proof of concept at that point, but even to prove out, hey, here is where the returns are. It's not a dollars and cents thing, right? But this is what you're going to see along the way. Great question just came up, and I don't think it's a liability question, so neither of us are legal experts here, but I'm sure this question comes up. I know we've seen it as well in some of our customers. So, right, if something goes wrong with AI, who's liable? Is it the tool? Is it the company, the agent itself? Is it the company, because these things are autonomous? These questions come up, Umesh, what is the typical, response to it that you hear, or where do you see liability lying?
So that's why what you are going to implement, you need to have your contract and liability agreed upon with business, and that's where the guardrails come in. So it is a collective responsibility, right? You can say today, you say you have automation, and automation is doing something. Who's liable for it, right? You're implementing, IT is implementing the automation. Automation fails, the liability is with IT. The AI is similar, right? But if AI, you have to put the guardrails saying, what are you putting in AI, and what is the scope of AI, what it will do, what it should not be doing. There are customers who are very clear saying, I want AI only to give me insights. At no point should my AI do any automations. It should not orchestrate anything. Orchestration there should be a human who takes a decision, right? So that's a guardrail you're putting. There are customers who says automation is okay if the automation impact, if it has a failure, is only at an endpoint level, like a user's worst case, the user just went unproductive for a few minutes or whatever, right? It cannot be that it goes and touches a big server farm and messes up, brings the whole company down. So there are measures and definitions to say what the liability should be, and we can have a good fireside chat for that,
right,
for an hour or so. That's an interesting conversation, and yeah, we get advice from legal, you get advice from the AI councils to ensure that how we navigate this change, and we provide that as a service as well. If people are interested, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. There isn't a blanket answer for it. I think you're right. I think all contracts and agreements vary, whether it's with a service provider, whether it's directly with a technology vendor, and so forth. And to Mesh's point, right? I would say any technology you're looking at, whether you are putting things together with a company like Cognizant, whether you're buying off the truck and deploying, right, you should ensure there is some level of human in the loop or human intervention when it gets to a point where something can be catastrophic to your environments or organizations and things like that. I know in some of our tools that we have in Rescue, for example, that we're piloting out to run certain scripts and automations and so forth, right, for it to take action, it won't go beyond a certain point where it knows that it's changing system level information on endpoint or something like that, that can really be detrimental. So there are these guardrails, you know, as a technology provider that we know that organizations want to see as well. And then if you're building out your own and working with the company, like you said, it's risk tolerance, it's where you want to go, right? And you know, but I think blanket taking these wholesale automations probably not advisable yet, because there are going to be some kinks along the way. But that's very fair. But great question. Okay, so I know we're getting tight on time here. I want to pivot a little bit to kind of the path to get there, right? So we're talking about a lot of different AI, a lot of things to get there. Tactically, you're talking to an IT leader, an innovator, someone that has this mindset, and they're saying to you, Umesh, I want to get started. What does a realistic roadmap look like? What should I be doing to kind of move ahead like this?
Yeah, so I think a little bit explain this. So you need to kind of definitely look at the current state, right, and assess it. If customer comes and says, just look at my environment and advise me, right? Should I go for tools modernization, rationalization? Should I bring in new teams? Should I change my operating model? Yes, it's almost everything, right? Could be everything. So we got to see the current state where a customer is, and then we look at benchmark it with what industry-like customers are doing with their similar personas, right? Because one model doesn't fit everybody. It may not be contextual. So you can't just take a standard rating and just measure everybody. So there is an assessment, contextual assessment of the maturity and the benchmarking. Then there has to be definition of clear goals which you want to achieve with realistic outcomes and timelines, and put it across what we call as a QSML model, right? Quick wins, short term, medium, long term. What do you want to achieve? And quick wins and short term is what most customers are very interested in, because they want to see it within the year or 18 months. Most CIOs are happy to see that, so they can take pride of it, and which is fair. So most of your tactical actions would be to drive those quick wins in short term. So there is enough, I would say, conviction from the business to fund further transformations. And sometimes, as I said, these seed funds, and if you do the quick wins and short term very well, and you save money, you're going to self-fund some more modernization for your medium and long-term approaches as well. And that's how customers are working with us, and that's what we advise them. That's kind of a repeat amount model. Many customers are using that approach to move from a chaotic, probably reactive model to move towards a modernized model. That's the approach.
Right. And I think one other thing probably you need to throw in there, depending on the organization and how rigid it is or is not, some level of making sure internally people are open to change, right? Because there is going to be significant change when you dive into this, even if you're starting small. You're going to be turning them things on their heads. You're probably going to be scaring some people, frustrating some people and stuff along the way. So some level of change management at an organizational level. And if you know that your organization is not good with change, that's something you got to solve beforehand,
100%.
because
100%, Chris. So in almost all these services, right, we have an OCM, or organizational change management, it's a recommendation. If the customers have their own, we give them inputs which they can execute. If not, we drive that for them. There are two parts to it, right? One is the communication, expectation setting, what's changing, etc., comes from OCM at org level. The second piece is adoption change management. Once it's communicated and you introduce technology or processes, somebody has to keep adopting it. And that's where, as part of operations, you need to bring what we call as ACM, adoption change management, to keep driving that so that people are part and parcel of the change. They are not just hearing from outside. They become the champions. We had change champions, as part of the frontline workers who become the change champions, and they become the advocates. And there's R&R for them, and we've seen that kind of a model being more beneficial than then driving top down and saying, hey, you got to follow all these rules, right, or adopt this change.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna jump to my last question. So if there's other questions, we have one or two extra ones in here. See if we have a chance to get to them. But before time, I'd like to kind of look forward to the future. So take out your crystal ball and Mesh, right? So 2 to 3 years ahead, let's say, what's going to differentiate an IT organization that's maybe going to thrive in this environment versus those that might continue to struggle a little bit or be on their heels?
See, from what we have been seeing, and if you asked me like 3 years ago the same question, it was pretty much we were in that crux, right? Generative AI was just coming in, like agentic was not there, and people were asking us the same question. Now we are in agentic AI, we're going into autotelic AI, interpretive AI. We have those different AIs which are coming in, right? That's the next step, agentic. So most companies who are having the first mover advantage by creating proof of concepts or doing pilots and learning what is the value of these modernization relevant to their organization, and also understand the limitations of this, because there's a lot of hype on it when there is a reality. So you need to understand the limitation in their ecosystem, what it can do. Then they can make some informed and right investments, right? And those companies who made that right now will be able to drive higher value of not only ROI, ROE, and keep moving forward. They will be the leaders, okay? Because you cannot just turn on a switch and say I moved from my legacy model to a modern agentic AI model. Not going to happen, right? I just brought in an agentic AI tool, I put it in, and no, it's not going to happen like that. Right. So you need that runway to really get to that mature state, because this is just imagine like what cloud brought in years ago, right? And what internet brought in years ago, right? So it took time for people to evolve. So I would say delayed and wait and watch organizations will be in a very high pressure to catch up, right? And they will not have the runway to achieve these outcomes. So they'll be a little struggling if you don't make the move now.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and I like the parallel to other inflection points in innovation, moving to cloud, growth of mobile, stuff like that. These were all transformational things. This is just another one of them, right? It might seem scary or different, but you got to approach it, in a same way with your eyes open, cautious, but kind of go into it. So I do need to pull up really quick here. We are going to ask if anyone is interested in learning from the GoTo team, the LogMeIn team, consulting with us on how we're approaching AI and what our tools can do. Let us know. We'll put you in touch with one of our consultative experts here. No hard sell on that. While people are going through this, another great question came up from Donna. Umesh, what questions do you ask to find out if a company is truly ready for AI? Is there something that you're out there, you're like, oh boy, they're hands off, this ain't going to happen with these guys? Or is there anything you ask?
No, we first ask their, what is their end goal? Clearly, right? Are you trying to do this short term, long term? What are you trying to save? Are you right? And if that can be done without AI, we'll recommend them solutions, right? It should not be they're doing AI just for the sake of I'm also doing AI. Right? It should be relevant. So that's a fundamental question we ask.
Yeah, that's huge, right? It's conversations thrown on a lot. We use it here at LogMeIn frequently. This idea of practical AI. So it's not like if you're ready for AI. It's one of the problems that needs to be solved, and there could be a good way to do it without AI. There might be a better way to do it with, right? And so it varies by the team. So I agree. That's a great way to look at it. It's not, hey, are you open to risk? Or what do you care about losing headcounts? No, it's my biggest problem is X, Y, and Z. Okay. Here's this technology that can help you solve those problems. Well, I know we're right at the top of the hour. Umesh, this was a fantastic discussion. I greatly appreciated you chatting with us today. Thank you, everyone that was spending time with us this morning, this afternoon, this evening. As Julie said, there'll be a little survey at the end that we ask you to write in. If you want to hear more from Umesh and have him back on, let us know in there. I'll drag him back on to tell us more about some of the stuff that they're working on there. So thank you again, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their Tuesday and rest of their week. Cheers.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everybody. Pleasure.
Bye.